Okay, get this. What if you could pay for a kid's school with a bag of trash? I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But it's actually the key to a totally new way of looking at some of the world's biggest problems. And today we're diving into this incredible story, all thanks to a great question from one of you about a school that's doing exactly that. Right. So this all kicked off with a question from our listener, Elton. He asked, what's the story with that school in India where students pay with plastic bags? And at first you might think, oh, that's a nice little charity project. But trust me, the real story here is, well, it's so much smarter than that. It's about completely rewiring an entire community right from the ground up. So, the secret sauce here, the thing that makes this whole school work, is this really powerful idea called sustainable entrepreneurship. And let's be clear, this isn't your typical charity, not at all. It's about building a system that basically fuels itself, a system that tackles a bunch of problems all at the same time. Let's dig into what that actually means. But before we can really get into the genius of the solution, we've got to wrap our heads around the problem itself. And I mean the sheer scale of it. To really get why this school's model is so brilliant, you first have to see what they're up against with plastic waste in India. Okay, just try to picture this. 8.9 million tons. That's how much plastic waste India's recycling market had to deal with in 2022 alone. I mean, that number is so huge it's almost impossible to visualize, right? It's like a literal tidal wave of plastic that the country has to manage year after year. And here's the kicker. This problem isn't just sitting still. It's actually speeding up. That 8.9 million tons from 2022, well, forecasts say it's going to more than double to 18.5 million tons by 2028. So what that tells you is that a simple one-time cleanup just isn't going to cut it. Whatever the solution is, it has to be ongoing and it absolutely has to be self-sustaining. All right, so you've got this massive problem and it's getting bigger by the minute. Where do you even start? Well, this brings us right back to that key idea we talked about, sustainable enterprise. Let's really look at this framework because it completely reframes a huge problem like plastic waste, not as this terrible burden, but as an opportunity. So what is sustainable entrepreneurship anyway? Well, to put it simply, it's all about using business smarts to solve social and environmental problems. But here's the most important part, the real game changer. The goal is to create a system that can run on its own. One that doesn't need to depend on constant donations just to keep the lights on. You can really break it down into 3 simple steps. First, you find a problem. Something like plastic waste or kids not being able to go to school. Step 2, you create a model to solve it that can sustain itself. And then step 3, the success of that model isn't just about money. It's measured by all the good things it does for people and for the planet. Okay, so we've looked at how big the problem is, and we've talked about the theory. Now, let's get back to that school in Pamohi, India, the Akshar Foundation school, and see how this whole thing actually works in the real world. This is where it all clicks into place. And this is just so powerful. When a parent comes to enroll their child, the first thing they have to do isn't pay money. It's make a promise. They have to pledge that they will never, ever burn plastic again. I mean, think about that. It tackles a massive health and environmental problem, all those toxic fumes, right at the source, just by asking for a simple commitment. And this is the absolute heart of the self-sustaining model. The kids pay their school fees with plastic waste they bring from home. It's such a simple but brilliant idea, and it does 2 huge things at once. First, it gets rid of the money problem that keeps so many kids out of school. And second, it teaches the entire community a new habit of collecting and segregating waste. Suddenly, every single household is part of the solution. But wait, it gets even better. The innovation doesn't just stop at the front gate. The education these kids get is super practical. That plastic they bring in, it doesn't just get tossed, it becomes the raw material for their vocational classes. They're learning real-world skills like carpentry, how to fix electronics, even how to install solar panels, things that will actually get them jobs. And here's where the economic piece of the puzzle slots in. The older students, they actually get paid for the work they do in these classes. This earn while you learn idea is absolutely crucial. It gives them a real incentive to stay in school. It lets them help out their families financially, and it directly fights that cycle of poverty that forces so many kids to drop out. So what happens when you put all of these pieces together? Well, you get this incredible ripple effect. This one single idea, turning plastic into education, starts to tackle some of the world's biggest challenges, but on a totally local level. We can actually frame this impact using the UN's big Sustainable Development Goals. So let's start with goal number one, no poverty. By giving kids a free education and a way for older students to earn an income, the school is directly attacking the financial walls that keep families stuck in poverty. All right, next up, goal 8, decent work and economic growth. This vocational training isn't just busy work to keep kids occupied. No way. It's about arming them with actual, marketable skills in things like green tech and skilled trades. It's preparing them to step right into the workforce and help their local economy grow. And then we have goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. And the impact here, you can see it, you can feel it right away. Because families are collecting plastic instead of burning it, the air is literally cleaner. The streets are cleaner. The whole community becomes a more sustainable place to live. And it's their own kids who are leading the charge. How cool is that? And finally, let's talk about goal 13, climate action. That one simple promise to stop burning plastic has a direct impact. It cuts down on harmful air pollution, it reduces carbon emissions, and it contributes in its own small but really meaningful way to the global fight against climate change. It just goes to show you that local action can have a huge impact. So, to get back to Elton's original question, what's the story? Well, the story is about a brilliant model that doesn't just solve problems, it transforms them. It looks at plastic waste and sees a resource. It looks at poverty and sees a barrier that skills can break down. It sees pollution as a bad habit that education can change. And that really leaves all of us with a final question to chew on. What problems in our own lives, in our own communities, are just waiting for us to look at them in a completely different way?